distinguished guests, invitees, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite our esteemed speakers of the Summit Inaugural on the stage. May I request Mr. Sudipto Saha, Head Financial Inclusion Access Development Services, Mr. Vipin Sharma, CEO Access Development Services, and Mr. Ramesh Arunachalam to please join us on stage. May I also welcome and invite Mr. V. Vaidyanathan, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, IDFC First Bank. Let's welcome him with an applause. We warmly welcome Mr. Jason Lamb, Deputy Director of Inclusive Financial Systems, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We warmly welcome Mr. Varun Sakuja, Director, Government Affairs, MasterCard. A very warm welcome to Mr. Hitendra Dave, Chief Executive Officer, HSBC India. A warm welcome to Mr. Manoj Mittal, Chairman and Managing Director, Small Industries Development Bank of India. And ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great privilege and honor to welcome onto the stage our respected chief guest, Mr. Nagaraju Madirala, Secretary, Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Let's welcome him with a round of applause, please. A very warm welcome to the esteemed dignitaries who have taken their seats on the dais. I now request Satyan from Access team to please welcome our eminent panelists with flowers. Mr. Sudipto Saha, Head Financial Inclusion Access Development Services, welcoming the esteemed chief guest. A very warm welcome to the Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Nagaraju Madirala, Secretary, Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance. We warmly welcome Mr. V. Vaidyanathan, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, IDFC First Bank. A warm and hearty welcome to Mr. Jason Lamb, Deputy Director of Inclusive Financial Systems, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. A very warm welcome to Mr. Varun Sakuja, Director, Government Affairs, MasterCard. A warm welcome to Mr. Hitendra Dave, Chief Executive Officer, HSBC India. A very warm and hearty welcome to Mr. Manoj Mittal, Chairman and Managing Director, Small Industries Development Bank of India. Thank you, Sudipto, for doing us the honors. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you all to please kindly rise and stand in attention for the national anthem.
Jana Gana Mana Adhinayak Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidhata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Vanga Vindhya Himachal Yamuna Ganga Uchchala Jaladhi Taranga तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you all. I now take the pleasure of inviting Mr. Sudipto Saha, Head Financial Inclusion Access, to deliver the welcome address. Please welcome with an applause.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome you all to the 21st Global Inclusive Finance Summit 2024. It's my great privilege and honor to welcome all the dignitaries on the stage, Mr. Ramesh Arunachalam, Mr. Jason Lamb, Mr. Varun Sakuja, Mr. Hitendra Dave, Mr. Vaidyanathan, Mr. Manoj Mittal. Special welcome and thanks to Mr. Madirala, Secretary DFS, for being with us today. It fills me with great pride that this is the 21st Global Inclusive Finance Summit that Axis is organizing. It started small when we had organized the first summit in 2004, but now it's among the largest convening globally on financial inclusion. Coincidentally, this year also marks the decade of the Indian financial inclusion story, which was started by the launch of the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana in August 2014. So several issues and challenges, breakthroughs and innovations on the ground that are advancing or impeding the campaign will get discussed across the 2 days of the summit in frank, forthright, sometimes fierce discussions across 23 sessions. During the 2 days, we have close to 125 thought leaders, policymakers, practitioners, bankers, technology providers, investors who will there share their views and perspectives in deftly moderated sessions. This has been, as has been the summit tradition, the annual Inclusive Finance India report 2024 will be released today. The report highlights will be presented by this, in this session itself by Mr. Ramesh Arunachalam, editor of the report. As always, the report contains an insightful analysis of how financial inclusion has advanced in the country over the last 1 year. Now in the 16th year, this evening, the Inclusive Finance India Awards program will also see several institutions and individuals in various categories being felicitated for their contribution to the financial inclusion. The awards have been instituted by Axis in partnership with HSBC and are now coveted and well recognized in the sector. Before concluding, I take this opportunity of thanking a record number of sponsors who have been associated with the summit, besides a large number of technical partners. Without this support, it would have not been possible for Axis to organize this large event. Lastly, I once again thank the large number of delegates who always manage to turn up at the summit. It's your active participation that makes the summit such a buzzing event. Once again, welcome you all and wishing you all a very happy new year in advance. I hope the 2 days are interesting and exciting for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saha, for this warm welcome address. So, as is customary, we now move towards the release of the much-awaited annual publication, the Inclusive Finance India Report 2024, annually brought out by Axis. The Inclusive Finance India State of Sector Report annually captures the landscape of financial inclusion initiatives, their progress, policy directives and issues and constraints. This year's report is authored by sector experts and senior researchers and academics, Mr. N. Srinivasan, Mr. Gaurav Gupta, Ms. Girija Srinivasan, Dr. Indradeep Ghosh, Ms. Smita Premachandar, Dr. T. Jayaseelan, and edited by Mr. Ramesh Arunachalam. I invite on stage the representatives of sponsors of the Inclusive Finance India Report. May I request them to please join us on stage for the release. Mr. Dheeraj Mutreja, Rabu Foundation, Mr. Vinay M. Thonse, Managing Director, State Bank of India. And may I also request Mr. Vipin Sharma to also join us on stage for the release of the report. Can we have the copies of the report please brought forth? And our request for the copies of the report to be handed over to the guests on the dais. I request Mr. Vipin Sharma to please present a copy of the report to Dr. Vivek Joshi for the release. And also to Mr. Madhirala, our Honorable Chief Guest. Thank you, Mr. Vinay M. Thonse, Mr. Mutreja, and Mr. Vipin Sharma for joining us on stage for the release. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time now to hear it from the editor, Sri Ramesh Arunachalam, on the state of financial inclusion in India. May I request him to share with us the highlights from the Inclusive Finance India Report 2024. Please welcome with an applause.
Am I audible? Good morning. Morning. I don't speak to my PowerPoints. They're just there. I'm going to tell you a story. This year's report was very tough. Vipin gave us a lot of work. First of all, let me thank Vipin for, again, reposing confidence in all of us to do this job. Thank you very much, Vipin. Thank you, Sudipto. Thank you, Access Development Services. There's been a lot of work that's gone on. Okay. Good morning, colleagues. Friends and distinguished guests on the dais. I'm extremely happy to present this year's IFI report. And let's look at the strategic context. India wants to be a 5 trillion economy. Okay, that's the story. If you want to be a 5 trillion economy, then you jolly well include everybody, right? If you don't include people, you're not going to get there. So India's inclusive finance story is about 3 themes, right? Scale, innovation, and equity, right? So how has this happened? Now, let me give you a quick example before I get into the chapters. If you look at UPI, when UPI started in 2016, it was facing so many challenges. Today, you look at October. In October, somewhere close to 16.58 billion transactions were processed. Unimaginable. If you ask me 10 years ago whether this was possible, no. If you ask me when UPI was launched, this is possible, no. And 23.5 trillion transactions. So I think, so that's some innovation, some scale, from tea stall owner to food vendor to many others at the grassroots use it, okay? But India's inclusive finance story is not just about UPI. It's about a whole ecosystem. The Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, 531.5 million accounts and counting. Aadhaar, 1.38 billion people have identities. It's huge, right? And then your UPI, then your Aadhaar-enabled payment system, and your other complementary systems. So we'll be looking at 13 chapters. So this year's report has been written by several of us. So I'll go with the first chapter. The first chapter looks at microfinance. Has microfinance driven inclusion? Been written by veteran, my dear good friend, mentor, Mr. Srinivasan. And it says the number of active clients are increasing, loan portfolios increasing, and the overall loan sizes are also increasing. He calls for a transition to individual lending, but then flags issues of governance, flags issues of concentration risk, right? Moving on to another chapter written by another dear friend, Gaurav, who's sitting here. And that's again an interesting take on banking and financial inclusion. He looks at the role of banks, but then I'm going to flag 3 issues that he raises. He says, 1, let's find different ways to measure the progress of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. He says the voluntary savings added on should be looked at, and how many of these PMJDY accounts become full service accounts could be looked at. He says grievance redressal mechanisms can be better. But overall, the chapter looks at a range of institutions, and it talks of expanding urban outreach. Okay. The third chapter, again written by a dear friend, Girija, who I'm not sure if she's here. So she's a veteran on SHG banking. Ever since I've known her 30 years ago, she's talked of SHGs. And so the SHG bank linkage scheme has done well, 14.4 million. SHGs, more than 50% of them have been credit linked, 2.09 trillion disbursements, but then there are capacity issues, right? And let me flag one important issue here coming out of the chapter. There is a movement towards individual enterprise lending through the Lakpati Didi scheme. But most importantly, 14.4 million SHGs. Imagine the data that's available if we are going to go into new age financing using artificial intelligence. So just keep that in mind, that I'll park that later when I come to the chapter. The fourth chapter written by yet another good friend, Indradeep, and his colleague Vidhiraj, debt distress. It looks at gives a measure from a borrower's perspective, and it says it's a very interesting chapter. It says look at debt distress as a cultural issue rather than as an economic or a technical issue, right? So you can read it, and it calls for eliminating overlending, ensuring more borrower-centric solutions, and responsible practices. Fresh chapter again. Fifth chapter on SMEs. I've authored it, and SMEs have made a phenomenal impact. This looks at the range of contributions made by different institutions in financing SMEs, but there are some very interesting trends. SMEs contribute 30% to the GDP, 45% to exports. There is a huge credit gap, and this credit gap is whether it's Niti Aayog, whether it's Parliamentary Standing Committee, they've talked of about 20 lakh crores, right? At least at the minimum, right? And so with this chapter looks at the outstanding performance of Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. It looks at how commercial, very interesting trends are visible. See, this is where strategic choice comes into play, right? Every organization, every institution picks on its market and works towards that. So you see public sector banks doing one thing, you see private commercial banks doing another thing, you see small finance banks doing something else, you see the NBFCs and fintechs doing something else. But read the chapter, and overall, one important trend, number of accounts has decreased over the years, last 10 years, portfolio has increased, loan sizes have gone higher. It gives you two important trends. There's financial deepening happening, and institutions prefer to work with repeat clients. They prefer to work with a smaller number of clients who have better asset quality. Moving on to the next chapter, again on small finance banks, authored by me. They've done an outstanding job. They're niche, they're urban. They've looked at unbanked and underbanked, and they have great technologies on par with our commercial banks, which is great. But then they require greater managerial and administrative capacity to manage their growth. There are some rising costs, issues to be flagged, a lot of unsecured loans, perhaps some level of geographic concentration, and this is common for all, not just for them. Cyber security. Whenever you increase the space of the surface area of digitization, you must be careful, right? So that's an issue. AI, artificial intelligence and financial inclusion, I've authored that chapter, has many applications, wonderful applications, right? And in the writings, in the chapters that I have written, that's my favorite chapter for myself. Okay, so it looks at alternative credit risk assessment, it looks at chatbots, it looks at loan underwriting, warehouse receipt financing. Interesting experiments are happening. If you look at alternative credit risk assessment, I'll just give you an example. In aquaculture, there are about 23 million farmers in India, small and marginal farmers involved in aquaculture. And if you want to estimate, if you want to give them larger, and aquaculture requires larger loans, 20 lakhs, 2 million and 2.5 million. If you want to lend them money, you need to understand what biomass is, what the biomass underwater is. You can use satellite, you can use causal AI to estimate biomass. That's phenomenal, right? Okay. Moving on, climate finance, agriculture, it impacts people involved in agriculture and fisheries, climate finance. So we looked at climate mitigation finance, climate adaptation finance. Some excellent work has been done by the Government of India, by SIDBI, by NABARD. All those issues are highlighted. There have been innovative methods of financing, blended finance. Two things stand out. Public-private community partnerships are very critical. Where climate finance has done well on the ground, and if you see the schemes of Government of India and you see the schemes of SIDBI and NABARD, PPCPs have been very, very critical. And I think this is an area that's going to be worth looking at in the future as extreme events are more. So climate adaptation finance to cope with emergencies, climate mitigation finance to reduce greenhouse gases, to help India meet its targets for the Paris Convention is important. 8th chapter written by dear friend Smita and her colleagues. The 20.5% women-led enterprises challenge in financing, and they talk of, it's a very interesting chapter, they talk of improving digital literacy for women, emphasizes that causality needs to be used to solve problems. You need to understand, calls for gender responsive financial products, formalization of women-led enterprises. And I wanted to add a third thing there, which is coming out in the other chapters as well. There is cross-sectional view of the other chapters, gender-driven credit scoring. That's going to be the order of the day, right? Okay, so let's moving on. This is all great. We've done all this, but how do we know where we have gotten to? It's like Alice in Wonderland, tell me where you want to go. So the question is, the Reserve Bank of India has done wonderful work by coming up with three sets of indices: the Antardrishti dashboard, the Financial Inclusion Index, which is a static index of a dynamic phenomenon. So it's not so good, but it's still good. Then you have the Digital Payment Index, which is phenomenal. I would ask you to look at the DPI because it uses every payment system indicator, right? And it's brilliant because it mirrors the crests and troughs that you have. And it has helped in data-driven decision making. It has helped in data-driven policy analysis. Moving on, again, I spoke about the UPI. The chapter traces the origin, growth, challenges, how it has become, what it has become, why it is where it is today. One area I just want to flag, UPI has already come out with conversational payments. Conversational payments are very critical for improving process and digital literacy. And that is taking off, and hopefully when that takes off, you'll see more inclusion. Moving on to the 12th chapter, digital financial inclusion rests on 5 pillars, and this sort of summarizes the whole of India's story. One is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. You needed that foundation. Without that foundation, you couldn't have done anything. Then Aadhaar, right? Without that identity, you can't do anything. UPI, Aadhaar-enabled payment system, again, brilliant. For people who don't have smartphones, AEPS has been very, very good, right? And then the fifth one are other kinds of systems, and then the unified lending interface is there, right? Okay. So then the 13th chapter, the trinity to watch out for in the future is JAM, UPI, and ULI, and I'll come to that in the last bit. And the 13th chapter looks at wash financing, looks at success stories, says there is a 20,000 crore debt demand, and calls for IoT-based monitoring. So what's the broad picture? There are 6 themes that I want to leave you with, and I'll just get off. One, I think the next decade, India has done a great job. This has been an audacious decade. I'm using Vipin's favorite word, audacious growth, and a lot of innovation. There's been a lot of scale, a lot of equity, but a lot needs to be done. We need to emphasize quality over quantity. We need to bring in technology in a bigger way. We need to bring in digital public infrastructure where it doesn't exist. For example, your terrestrial broadband doesn't go everywhere. Satellite broadband is an alternative that can be brought in. So with these words, I'd like to close saying India's financial inclusion story has been driven by leadership. Leadership right from the top to the bottom. So right from Prime Minister Honorable Narendra Modi to the grassroots functionary, India's story has been driven by all of you, driven by every stakeholder. It's owned by all of you. And this is a great story. A lot of good things have happened. Great innovation has happened. Great scale has happened. And a lot of equity has happened. And with that, I close. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir, for that detailed highlights from the Inclusive Finance India Report 2024. And now it's time for us to hear views and insights from our esteemed inaugural panel speakers. May I first invite Mr. Jason Lamb, Deputy Director of Inclusive Finance Systems, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to deliver the special address. Please welcome with an applause.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'd like to recognize our distinguished guests on the stage and thank Mr. Sharma for the overview of the report just released today. I'm in a tough spot to follow the highlights from that speech, but I hope that I can share a few things that will both congratulate each of you in this room, but also challenge you for the future. It's an honor to be in India today, and it's an amazing and remarkable journey that the financial inclusion industry has been in India, not just for the past decade, but even longer. And both economic development and financial services, how they're delivered has changed, improved remarkably over the last decade. As the previous speaker mentioned, India has been a visionary, and that vision started from the top and went all the way through the industry in how it's developed its digital economy. And that includes all the things mentioned before, Aadhaar, UPI, PMJDY, the Aadhaar-enabled payments, DBT transfer enabled by the JAM Trinity, and the agent model. In fact, the Bank for International Settlements once said that India would only be able to get to 80% inclusion access over 40 some years. And you were able to do that in less than 10, for sure, even maybe 5. This has resulted in some remarkable improvements in some of the data coming out of India. The RBI's Financial Inclusion Index rose from 43 to 64 in 8 years. The Digital Payment Index rose from 100 to 450 in 7 years. And GDP growth has lifted 140 million Indians out of poverty in just the last 5 years, changing the poverty pyramid to a kite and showing the emerging middle class. The government of India and providers in this room have also been working to create more access to credit for nano and micro merchants. So it's been a great decade. However, now India has become such an exemplar that you're now underneath the microscope. And so many countries come to India to learn what India is doing and see what they can take home and implement in their own countries. In fact, the Gates Foundation has brought delegations from Indonesia, from Nigeria, from Ethiopia, from Tanzania, just to name a few. I think there might be 1 or 2 others where we've sought to help our other focus countries learn from what India is doing. And despite all the progress that you've made, there's still some barriers that exist. I think in a very important urban-rural divide in inclusion and usage, persistent gender gap, particularly in usage and in rural areas, trust, which we're dealing with in all of our digital ecosystems. How do we create more trust with the proliferation of fraud and scams and different things that I think all of us are aware of? But when you're less literate, less familiar with a digital ecosystem, they might cause you a little more caution. Also, digital financial literacy and data privacy are big issues that we are hoping that India will be a trailblazer in solving. These challenges require a coordinated effort, not just of the government and a government's vision for inclusion, but also the regulator, the private sector actor, developmental partners, and even consumers being able to better express what they need to see, what they would like to see in terms of products and services offered to them. So there's really a call for collective action for all of us to continue to support the Indian journey and thereby support the journey of many countries around the world. As I said, you're now under a microscope, which adds a lot more pressure, but it actually also adds an opportunity to scale not just to the 1.4 billion Indians, but to the 200 million Ethiopians, the 250 million Nigerians, the 200 million Pakistanis and Bangladeshis and Indonesians. All these countries are looking to India to solve the problems that are really at the forefront of a digital economy. So guided by the beliefs that all lives have equal value, the Gates Foundation works to help people lead a healthy and productive life, and we are deeply committed to advancing financial inclusion in India, especially for women and other vulnerable groups who are left out of the revolution that we've seen over the past decade. We know that the government here and stakeholders in this room have been on a path for full inclusion and have used innovation, regulation, all other tools, sometimes just vision, to achieve full inclusion. And we've been along for the ride to help support stakeholders in that effort. It's a testament to our shared vision that we see India as an exemplar and that India is influencing so many other parts of the world and countries that are important to the Gates Foundation. So I am here today really to learn from this industry conference. I know our partners quite well, but I don't know the whole industry. And so I'm excited to learn from this conference. I hope that it's a success. And I think one thing that all of our focus countries that the Gates Foundation supports around the world is working on is something around data privacy. And so if there's one thing that we could ask this group, the government, regulators, stakeholders, is to really figure out a way to use this tremendous data exhaust that's being created in India to share anonymized data around use cases, geography, gender, in a way that it can help us begin to address those that have been left behind. It's a challenge that every one of our focus countries is working on. India's been ahead, and so we're hoping that India can also chart a course for not only domestically, but for our other countries to follow. And so thank you for the opportunity to be here to address this, this group, and I look forward to the event.
Thank you, Mr. Lam. Since you said you're here to learn, here's wishing you happy learnings. Ladies and gentlemen, seated with us on the dais this morning is Mr. V. Vaidyanathan, Managing Director and CEO, IDFC First Bank. May I now invite him to share his thoughts.
Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to see every one of you, and thank you, Vipin, for organizing this for the 21st year in the row. So big word to compliment to Vipin. Mr. Nagaraju and everybody else on the dais, thank you for gracing the occasion and for participating in the discussions. Now, today's discussion, I'm presenting a concept called greenfield research-based lending. The reason I bring this out is that when we look at the Indian system, whether this is NBFCs, banks, etc., most of the institutions, just to keep your gross NPL low and net NPL low, or keep asset quality high, which is really very important, tend to have a certain picture of a customer they want to lend to, and they roughly go to that segment. There's someone with collateral, someone with cash flow, someone with an established business, someone's where cash flow can be evidenced on the bank account. These are some standards that, or income tax returns. So these are standards that have been used for a long period of time. In the last 4 or 5 years, or maybe 10 years, because of the rapid evolution of the digital payment, digital public good infrastructure, a number of ecosystems have come about, and that situation is rapidly changing. But still, nevertheless, this issue of people wanting to lend to a particular segment which has seen the good credit profile is definitely there. It is also true that India has done really a massive amount of work over the last many years. The prior speaker Ramesh spoke about this. In terms of the ecosystem development, really, who really imagined that India was going to set up, 530 million? Just think about it: 530 million accounts with account balances of about 2.3 lakh crores. And the number of women who had bank accounts in 2011 was 28% of the country. Today it is just 80%. Just 10 years, or maybe 13, 14 years. This is impossible. Nothing could not have been done for, why was it not done for 70 years after independence? So really massive work has happened. If you think of the Mudra program, close to about 5.5 lakh crores have been disbursed in Mudra last year alone in the three categories, the Kishore, Tarun, and one more category. So this is massive work going on, no doubt. But the purpose of presenting greenfield research is to open up segments outside of what is traditionally known. So that is the subject of today's discussion. So here it goes. I'd like to actually first take you through a specific example of an interview I did with a particular cohort, and then you can reflect this and multiply this in your head in multiple profiles. Volume.
उसके बाद 12.5% तो डेली के हिसाब से कार्ड को देती है। हाँ, अभी वो ये 15,000 का 300 रुपया डेली करना पड़ता है 7 दिन। अभी डेट दिया है, 7 दिन दिया है, तो 15,000 दिया हुआ। 15,000 के लिए? हाँ, अभी 7 दिन 300 रुपया करना है। ये कितने हैं? ये 15,000 का है, तो 5 दिन का है। ये ऐसे जुलाया है, तो 1500 5 दिन का है। ये भाग जमा करा उसको, लेकिन इंटरेस्ट और मूल मिला के। तो आपने 15,000 लिया और 1500 भरा है 21 दिनों में। फिर आपने 1500 भरा, फिर 1500 भरा, ऐसे करते करते कितना भरा? 7 दिन भरना पड़ेगा। 7 दिन। जैसे ठीक है, बात समझ आ रही है। जैसे आपने नहीं भरना चाहिए, तो क्या करते हैं? तो 7 दिन पूरा हो गया, तो जो पैसा बचा है, जैसे 1,000 बचा है, तो उसमें 4,000 और भी करके फिर 7 दिन का वापस करना है। टैक्सी में 15,000 से 20,000। ये अपना गाड़ी का दूसरी। हमारा बैलेंस बचा है, सब कुछ गाड़ी का, गैस का, तो ये नहीं पूरा होता है तो फिर किसी से लेना पड़ता है बन जाए अभी परसों 10% बंदे करके और जो 5,100 दे दिया जाएगा
So, so I'm not sure how good the voice quality was. So pardon me in case you couldn't hear that very well. But let me just sum it up for you. Basically, he has taken two loans, one for 15,000 rupees, and later in the end, he's talked about borrowing some 5,000 rupees. He's paying 100 rupees per day of interest, not principal, interest. You multiply 100 into 30, 3,000 rupees of interest on a principal of 5,000 rupees. That's 60%. You multiply that by 12, that's 720%. And remember, he's paying every day. So therefore, if you compound that compound factor, it comes down to 1,440%. Now, when we hear these tales that informal economy is costing people 1,000%, 1,400%, or 300%, it is not fiction. You could see it's real here. So the point is that for such people, we have been, we were earlier a non-bank finance company, and our cost of funds used to be like 12, 13%. So we wanted to lend at 21, 22, 23% because that was the way the economic viability would have worked out. So how do you lend in today's ecosystem? We started just in 2010. And how do you lend at 23, 24%? So you got to find a segment. And the segment should not default, should have good credit quality. How do you do that? That you do not by lending what every other bank is lending. We identified this segment, and I'm going to show you that we did similar research with close to a large number of profiles. This for an egg vendor, this for a dairy economy. So here we ask questions about in terms of the literage and all the stuff, microfinance economy, chemist, kirana stores, they're all done by employees of the bank. Agri input stores, etc. So basically, we go and research every such. We've done 100 such profiles. The questions after you ask them are different than the regular ones. So you can see here, this research we have done for kirana stores, restaurant businesses, apparel retailers, salon stores, pharmacy, tours, cattle rearers, carpenters, electronic sales, fabrication, garage, scrap business, sanitary, tailoring, textile, perishables, doctors, dentists, etc. Now, the questions that we ask of these people then are much more detailed. It's something like this. When you go and meet a client, you ask them this, oftentimes I've found that many people say we do MSME lending. Of course, it's great, MSME lending. So I've seen this often in state-owned banks. We have MSME bank scorecard. MSME scorecard क्या होता है? Because the questions are very different for a chemist for a kirana shop. You can see this question for kirana shop: number of footfalls. Does the ownership of the kirana shop is actually attended to by the person or by an employee? What is the size of the square feet, etc. Now the questions for a restaurant business are different. What is the average size of the bill? It's a South Indian, North Indian, Chinese. What is the total daily sales, ownership or employee-driven, daily footfall, square footage, number of tables, etc. You go this for, say, in the case of salons. Type of salon, is it male, female, cleanliness, number of staff, daily footfall or service provided. Similarly, what is the cattle count? What is the number kind of cattle breed? Is the milch animals, state level rates, etc. So every segment for tailoring, for pharmaceuticals, for apparel business, and each of these 100 industries we talked about, engineering, fabrication, dyeing, manufacturing, the questions are very different for every segment. We did this from 2010 onwards, and of course, we'll continue to build it till today. It's been 15 years. And then for each of the segments, based on the conversation we get, supposing you get a certain view about a certain restaurant business, Then you go and survey, say, 100 restaurants or 200 restaurants. Then you find a certain parameters linking between the two of them. And then you lend to that segment. And then you see the default rates. And then you change the criteria from time to time. It's a long period of research. It takes 14, 15 years to build really high quality research on this front. And we've been doing this research for a long period of time now. And in this research, when we lend, then like how Amazon or many of these corporations, people who bought this book will buy this book next because they know it through algorithm. So people who behaved a particular way for a particular set of questions will behave a particular way next. So this is the kind of algorithm built. And then these algorithms, we put them, and now with the artificial intelligence capabilities come in, advanced scorecards coming in, etc., then these are put and coded into a container. You develop very advanced scorecards, and the next customer applies for the segment, you just go and ask them these 20 or 10 or 15 or 12, 14 questions, which we know are the most relevant questions for that segment, whether you're a cattle raider or a restaurant or a small-time manufacturer, etc. So with this, they come into a pool, and I must tell you that in case you then, after that, you do this, and then you take a decision on the customer. Again here, the salesperson goes, they collect a certain set of information. The credit person independently goes and does all this verification. Now, two databases then married, and then you get a complete picture. And then on this picture, then with the benefit of the digital public infrastructure which India has created, what has happened is that for identity, you can go and check into Aadhaar. For validation, you can go into PAN validation of the same last 4 digits. Then for income verification, you can scan the QR, you can scan the bank statement. Nowadays, all information coming through QR code, information coming into the bank statement, you can scan that and you can take a quick decision on the loan. For the purpose of agreement, for fraud evaluation, again, AI is helping in a very massive way. Now generative AI will help in an even more massive way. Then after that, for agreement, you do an e-agreement. For a mandate, you take an electronic mandate. For KYC, you take a biometric KYC. So what I'm trying to say is that this primary research, which I described earlier, you couple that with the digital ecosystem the country has come, this becomes paperless, that becomes paperless, and then attach AI on top of it. That's the third big force coming along. So the three pieces, that is primary research, the digital ecosystem, and the artificial intelligence coming together, they make a really powerful force. I must tell you that what I'm sharing with you is not academic. I want to just share with you what the numbers are in the interest of time. Now, this, of course, you can see that this we've been doing from 2010. We've shown you the numbers there. And the loan book has grown from 94 crores in 2010 to 1,83,000 crores today. It's not academic. So it's 94 crores to about 30,000 crores. It came on an NBFC platform, and from a 30,000 crores now to 1,80,000 crores, it is coming on a bank platform. Our own belief and our own assessment is that over the next 5 years, this will be touching something like about 4.5 lakh crores. And these amounts are not only for these categories we talked about. This includes loan against property, this includes mortgages, this includes gold loans, but every segment, try and find some segment which is underserved, and through greenfield research, you can find some very unique category and insights, make a product around it, develop a scorecard around it, attach the paperless process onto it, attach a digital stack, India stack on it, and then power it up for a paperless process. And that makes the life of and the more we promote this, more will bring people out of the informal economy. Right now, for example, microfinance is it's on the subject of discussion. Credit costs have gone up. Over leveraging has happened in the segment. Certain lending practices have gone wrong. Things have happened. And we should acknowledge that, we should address that, we should fix that. MFIN and everybody's working on it. But we should also know that it is a very important segment. If we don't promote that business, we will drive them all back to the taxi driver economy of borrowing at 100%, 200%, and 1,400%. I told you the 1,400% is not academic. I live showed that to you. So, or on the video. So we will drive them back. So it's a very important segment. We should not throw the baby out of the bathwater along with the bathwater. We should be very careful here. We should improvise, we should improve, and we should develop on this segment. And now with the power of AI and the scorecards, it can get even better. That segment has had its challenges every 4, 5 years. It has its own side cycle, but only with every cycle and improvement only gets better, particularly microfinance, because these segments that we talked about, many of these segments have an established office, a kirana shop, or a restaurant. They're like physical offices. Microfinance is often lent to people who are not even this segment, they're one level below. When I say one level below, I mean these are people making agarbattis at home, and so on and so forth. Like, small time businesses, maybe cattle rearing and on. So it's an important segment for the country. We should learn from it, we should improve on it, and we should develop on it, and get going. It's an important segment. And that, having said that, including all business, touched about 1.8 lakh crore. Now I want to show you how the asset quality has been. Now again, just to tell you that this entire primary research work is not academic, I want to tell you that it's been going on for 15 years for us. In 15 years, our gross NPS never crossed, like, except COVID when it went to 4%. It's always 2%. Even demonetization, GST, ILFS, etc. So usually in this segment, gross NPS 2%, net NPS 1%, and credit cost is 2%. So you take that as a rough formula, like 212, roughly it works. Currently, gross NPS is even lesser. You can see it is 1.51% and net 1.57%, and net is 0.53. That's a little lower than the historical averages, but still think of like 212. So 212, this model works pretty well, and it survived over 15 years, and therefore 15 is a long enough time for a typically 1-year loans or 2-year loans. Now I want to just share with you that in the end, I want to share with you that we've done close to 40 million loans. And I told you the 212, and I told you that it's performed well during cycles. There are two things to watch out for: ever watchful and continuous improvement. And most importantly, keep riding on to the new wave of technology. Because I have often seen many bankers, particularly state-owned banks, saying that, oh, the delinquency in MSME sector is 14% or 15%. Not anymore, until maybe 2, 3 years ago. Off late, most people have cleaned up the books. But I've heard commonly heard 14, 15%. Even the public reports say that. But done like this, with a high quality research, you can access a blue ocean. You can get good returns. It is much superior for them compared to the informal economy. We can have low NPA, it's a sustainable model, and we can make viable businesses for all. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Vaidyanathan. Ladies and gentlemen, seated with us on the dais is Mr. Varun Sakuja, Director, Government Affairs, MasterCard. May I now invite him to share his perspective. Please welcome with an applause.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and guests. Nagaraj sir, thank you, of course, Vipin and Access team for inviting us, and of course, all the panelists. I loved what Mr. Vaidyanathan spoke around. Two aspects which caught my attention, and something personal I wanted to share. About 20 years ago when I started my career, the access to finance and access to digital services was, for a small merchant and a micro SME, was seen in a very different avatar. And I started my career with acquiring merchants. And on ground, I remember when, as a bank representative, I went to acquire a small merchant in a city in Agra. The entire ecosystem of that particular pin code came together and were lining up to really take a point of sale acceptance terminal, because for them that access to a customer and that aspect of inclusion was very important. So really happy that almost 20 years later, today we are at a stage where, as a country and as an economy, we are really thriving. So I really wanted to share that. Thank you very much for sharing that anecdote. I want to begin by talking about that India, as one of the fastest growing major economy, we are at a pivotal moment as a country, driven by, of course, strong political stability, infrastructure investments, and of course, manufacturing growth, and the diverse supply chain. He also hinted upon an interesting aspect of supply chain, and my colleague Ramesh, in his opening remark, spoke about public-private partnerships. So on supply chains, specifically on inclusion, I think really from saying that how the ecosystem, when it comes together, is super important. And forums like these are very critical for us to 47. A critical element in this vision, I feel, is the financial inclusion, and it ensures that access to not just banking but digital financial services, credit for everyone, including women. And we work very cohesively together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and that's again a very strong foundation when it comes to ensuring that each and every aspect and each and every participant of the economy is included and not just one specific sector. So of course, whether it's entrepreneurs, farmers, micro and small enterprises, all put together. And one of the things that we are actually proud of, and again going back to Vedyanathanji's remark on greenfield research and how we can use alternate credit. One of the things that you'll also hear today my colleague talk about is our platforms called as Community Pass and Farm Pass, which is really to make sure that how do we provide access to financial institutions to look at the sector which is underserved and underpenetrated, especially because they don't have a traditional credit score. So those aspects are including, getting them access to other services are critical. Expanding financial inclusion, of course, is key to every sector. Over the past decade, there has been a significant change, and there is a robust foundation. And my colleagues also spoke about the DPI. And, we are very proud and happy that in our country, the digital public infrastructure is really supporting that growth. We've seen, with even the advent of ULI, I had the privilege this Monday, of course, to meet with one of our CJMs, Shri Suvenduji in RBI. And, the way I see the fintech department in RBI and others really focusing on the growth and making sure that each and every platform and DPI is available, not just one sector, but really talking about financial inclusion. I think that speaks volume. And in the opening remark, I think there was a mention about that from top down. There is a great support from the leadership in the government, from Shri Modi, Narendra Modi himself to the DFS. So we're really happy and proud to see that. One of the, parameters or a specific thing that I want to share is that the rise in financial inclusion index, the RBI's financial inclusion index actually has increased from 64.2% in March 2024 from what it was, which is 60.1% just a year ago, and increased in bank population from 30% back in 2014 to about 80% in 2024. These are not small numbers, right? So the fact that the ecosystem and the government are together looking at it makes it far more easier for ecosystem players such as us to look at it. There has been a significant increase, even if you talk about the bank branches from 11.74 to 14.74 per 100,000 customers. Those smaller changes are very, very critical. And, as a players and ecosystem providers, it's our prerogative and duty and responsibility at the same time to make sure that we are enabling the access when it comes to government welfare schemes, when it comes to financial inclusion. All of these parameters need to be tracked, including the important aspect of credit linkage and literacy programs. One of the things that we've observed with the partnership that we've managed to do over the last so many years with Access, and thanks to Vipin and Sudipto and the team, is that education is super important. There are times that numerous schemes are available. There are times that great partners such as ourselves are doing a lot of work. But till such time the stakeholder in the end is aware of it, it is of no use. So I think partners such as Access really make it an effort, and to make sure that education and awareness is also there around this. India's journey toward inclusion is multifaceted, like I spoke about. And the 5 C's that popularly a lot of people talk about is content, capacity, community, communication, and collaboration. And I can't emphasize more on the last aspect, which is on communication and collaboration. I think that's super important. We have a lot of tools. We have a great support from the government. We have great support from the regulator, but it is our responsibility as a financial institution, it is our responsibility as a technology company, for example, as MasterCard, to do so, that we bring together. And with this, I just want to say that we are very proud to be a part of the India's digital and financial inclusion journey. We have forged collaboration across private sectors, of course, with the government, with the civil society. For instance, with Access, one of our partnerships on promoting digital financial literacy, which I was talking about, which is empowering not just a specific sector, but also the entire gamut of inclusion, which includes farmers as well. We've also worked on a project called Project Samriddhi, which equips small entrepreneurs, specifically women entrepreneurs, and and Delhi was one of the areas that we started that with. We also are working on a project called as Buddhi Money, which is aimed at enhancing MSMEs' financial capabilities through mobile banking, businesses, and others. Another flagship program for us, and we are very proud as Mastercard to have Center for Inclusive Growth. So Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth launched Strive in India as a platform, which is to empower 500,000 small businesses, including micro enterprises, specifically focusing on women entrepreneurs, because we do feel that that's one of the underserved categories that we should focus on. It focuses on agri entrepreneurs to thrive in the digital economy and promoting digital literacies. There is also a platform of ours that we would want to talk about, called as Digital Saksham. That was something which was launched in collaboration with the Confederation of Indian Industries and Mastercard Strive in 2021. Again, with the Digital Saksham, the idea was that we're looking at digitizing nearly 300,000 MSMEs and train over 70,000 small businesses across 13 Indian states. So the idea is it's really more around education and empowerment altogether when it comes to inclusion. The tools for us are available. There is another platform that we spoke of earlier, which is the Mastercard's Project Kirana, in partnership with, of course, USAID and Access, which has helped 2,000 small women shopkeepers to adopt digital payments, and so on and so forth. So while I don't want to read more around this, but just share the fact that in the last almost 2 decades that I've been part of business, that other things that we've done, the only thing that I've seen work better is the collaboration of private-public partnerships. So I just want to echo those sentiments with this is distinguished panelist on this dais today, and with Access. And I'm looking forward to hearing other views and continuing this collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sakuja. I now invite Mr. Hitendra Dave, Chairman and Managing Director, Small Industries Development Bank of India, to kindly articulate his thoughts. Please welcome with an applause. I warmly welcome Mr. Hitendra Dave from HSBC India to kindly share his perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Nagaraju, other speakers on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It's my great pleasure to be here at this Global Inclusive Finance Summit. I think we've already heard quite a bit. Vaidyanathan's very in-depth greenfield research-based, Mr. Arunachalam's details on the report that's been launched, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, MasterCard speakers, etc. So in my remarks, I'm going to try and provide a broad sweep of where we are today or how we've got here. And then obviously, the rest of the day is all about the discussions, which will add to the quality of the discussion that we've already had. I think just as a broader context, I think the first time the term financial inclusion was used was actually at the United Nations, right? In the context of that time's debate on sustainable development. And that debate really was about the rich countries and the poor countries. The initial debate on financial inclusion or inclusion was about rich countries and poor countries. And within rich countries, the rich and the poor, and within poor countries, of course, the rich and the poor. And that's how it started. So it started actually as an international discussion at the United Nations around the turn of the century. But then let's take it to the India context, right? India, I think if you think about it, the first very, very effective step on financial inclusion that India took was almost now about 60, 65 years back through nationalization of the banks, right? That was the time when, by and large, finance, banking, credit, whatever name called, largely was urban centric, and within the urban centric, only to the urban elite. I mean, I don't think there were too many people getting mortgages in 1970, let alone personal loans or the kind of loans Vaidyanathan showed us in that video. So that was the first step, and we heard the earlier speakers speak about the number of branches that have got added. I think, we just forget that in the last, it's just incredible the amount of banking outreach that's got done. All credit largely, I would say, to public sector banks, State Bank of India, MD sitting there. But that was the first major step on financial inclusion, if you just sweep back in time a little bit. I think within that, subsequently, the next major step, I think, was the introduction of the priority sector lending norms. I think, we just don't realize that till that time, banks just lent to people that they wanted to lend to. There was no directed lending. Now, as a professional banker, do I love directed lending? I don't. But as an Indian, do I see the benefits of doing that? I absolutely see it. If the regulators and the authorities had not forced finance to go to agri, finance to go to micro, finance to go to small and medium enterprises, we would all be lending to the BSE 500 listed companies and doing nothing else at all, right? So the first two major steps have been through administrative, government, and regulatory action. And within priority sector lending norms, now you see there are so many opportunities. I think, the speaker after me hopefully will be the chairman and managing director of SIDBI and not the chairman and managing director of HSBC. They have this Jokata index. NABARD works wonderfully on FPOs. The Udyam portal where banks like mine can actually see, listen, which are the companies which fit into the micro, the small, the medium. There's a lot of work which has got done over this sweep of time, starting with late 60s to what we have today. I think move forward in time, I think we heard a lot about Jan Dhan accounts. I mean, 55 crore accounts, 2/3 in rural and semi-urban areas, more than 50%, accounts belonging to women. But it's not just the Jan Dhan account, it's what it's done, right? I mean, I think the secretary will know better, but every time the PM Kisan funds are transferred, it goes directly at the click of a button to so many crores of people with no leakage. I mean, this is just incredible. I would think even 7, 8 years back, even 5 years back, we might have struggled to accept that 20, 30 crore people will get money within 5 minutes or within less than 5 minutes, and there is very, very little leakage. Remember, we are a country where where we thought the leakage was as high as 90% at some point of time in government transfers and subsidies and grants, etc. Moving forward further, UPI, I know enough spoken about UPI, 16 billion transactions, 1 trillion, whatever trillion. But more importantly, I think my sense is from a financial inclusion perspective, what's that done is that made everybody financially, at least digitally literate. Whether you are a sabji wala, newspaper delivery, milkman, car washer or whatever, everybody knows this is how you can receive money, this is how you pay money. You go outside, if you eat a pan and you pay the 40 rupees or 30 rupees, the hooter sounds up, 30 rupees received or something. It is dramatic what's happened. I think if I'm just going back all the way to nationalization to now, and I think the most exciting thing that awaits us, if the concept is as good as what I have been informed, is ULI, which is, just UPI has just transformed payments. Can ULI transform lending? Because rather than build all of us building our individual APIs and connections with hundreds of databases, they will just make this one box where we just go into that one box, and that box then goes to whoever, and that box keeps refining. I think it has potential. If ULI does to lending, especially to the small business, shopkeeper, kirana, agri, etc., as UPI has done to the way they receive payment, it has profound implications, not just for credit, but actually for India's economic growth, because we do know that even today, credit has not flown as much as it should to very, very small farmers and businesses, etc. So I think a lot of work has got done. I think one of the previous speakers mentioned that BIS had mentioned that it might take 8 decades for India to achieve financial inclusion, but at the G20 summit, which India was the chair of last year, I think there was a report and by the way, the HSBC group chairman was the co-chair along with the SBI chairman of the financial inclusion vertical there, and actually it said there that India has achieved in financial inclusion in the last 6 years what would normally have taken 50 years. So it is, I think I think a lot of credit for that, unlike in other parts of the world, goes to the administration, the government and the regulators here. Private sector has plugged, they have made plug and play possibilities available to the private sector here, and it's wonderful there. So with that background, what does HSBC do? We are a global bank. Why are we talking about financial inclusion? Why am I even on the stage here? So I think one is, of course, we are an old partner of Vipin and Access. I think, I think someone mentioned about the awards to be given in the evening today. I think I've been very privileged to be a co-chair of that jury there. As an organization, we accept that we do not have access. We are not physically near the people that need financial inclusion in the strictest sense of the word, but we do so. We are a very large partner to the microfinance industry, which got spoken about here. We have a significant amount of securitized assets on our book. So by other banks like Vaidyanathan's originate the loans, and we use the firepower of our balance sheet to essentially fund the end obligors who are finally the agri and the small and the micro kind of borrowers. We are also bringing in a lot of global DFIs into the country, right? There's a lot of DFIs we want to do financial inclusion, but they are looking for someone that they work around the world. We work with multiple DFIs to make sure that they understand the sector and can play their role through financial or non-financial participation. So, and even in our CSR activities, I think our financial inclusion is deeply embedded in our CSR mindset as well. So we do the role we can, and I'm sure we are very excited to be part of this journey. Before I conclude, I do want to share that our team, that is the HSBC team, will be hosting a session later in the day on how can financial inclusion drive the adoption of climate smart agricultural practices. I invite all of you to please try and join for that session, because this does promise to be a very active roundtable discussion. With that, I'll conclude by just hoping, and I'm sure that the deliberations, the addresses, the sessions that will further provide impetus to this most critical agenda of financial inclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dave. I now invite Mr. Manoj Mittal, Chairman and Managing Director, Small Industries Development Bank of India, to kindly share his perspective.
Respected secretaries, dignitaries on the dais, and the participants, very good morning to all of you. I'll keep it brief. SIDBI again has been a part of this conference on financial inclusion space for so many decades, and it has been part of all of our professional lives. So I'll just describe the SIDBI's journey in three phases. After a preparatory phase about 3 decades back, we have got into the phase one, and it was about promoting microfinance institutions. And you all have been part of this particular journey, and particularly a sector, how a DFI can develop a sector which has become an industry. And SIDBI has played that key role. So a lot of experience on organizational development and sectoral development. So I don't dwell much on that part. Now, the second phase, which is under implementation, and it's all about loans, larger loans, individual loans to the microfinance borrowers or to the individual enterprises. So that's where we have been experimenting since last 2 years or more, and very happy to share with you that roughly we have disbursed 5,100 crores rupees, and that to about 2.5 lakh individual borrowers through a partners network. So this system has been doing well, and now there is a possibility of scaling it up, and we are bringing certain algorithms to bring down the cost of the lending for the partners also, and to better manage those risks. So this is phase two. In this phase two, it's not only a microfinance institution, we are also participating with the SHG groups. Individual SHG loans also are being given. Some experiment already going on in Bihar and Maharashtra. And we are participating here with the cluster level federations. Some experiments done, few crores have been disbursed, and now we are going to scale up this particular channel as well. And in fact, I should thank you, Women's World Bank reminded me. So we'll be scaling it up. This is also, and we see a great potential here. And on the SHG side, individual SHG loan. And the third thing, which Mr. Dave mentioned, and I actually thank him, he brought the subject of the UAP, or Dummy Assist Portal. And this is something which is going to the phase three. Around 2.34 crore people already registered, individual enterprises, informal micro enterprises already registered on this portal. So right now it's a registry, and we are in the process of converting it a platform for the landing and betterment of these SMEs. 2 days back, we had a stakeholder discussion on this particular subject as well. And we would be adding certain more data points here and then take it forward for a better connect. That there, all of you probably can contribute on that. We'll be coming to you. There are certain working groups which have been formed, and it would be actually answering what next. So this is a preparatory phase, and with the Udyam Assist portal, we try to reach out to all those who have got some kind of a credit or who have not got any credit at all. So this is something which is the next phase. In the last, SIDBI has been a long-standing partner here. The sessions which I've seen are very relevant, and panels are very powerful. I wish you all the very best for the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mittal, for this address. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to welcome in our midst today Mr. M. Nagaraju. He joined the Indian Administrative Service in the year 1993 and holds a master's in philosophy and is an alumnus of the University of Hyderabad. He was a visiting fellow at the University of Pennsylvania for 1 year in 2012-13 and visiting research scholar in Stonehill College in 2018 and 19. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the honored chief guest. May I request him to kindly deliver his address.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and all the respected dignitaries on the dais. Let me thank Access for inviting me today's summit. I'm very glad that this is the 21st annual summit you are holding. I think this is a great contribution to the financial inclusion. Now, as you must have seen me, I am actually carrying 15-page speech written to speak and bore all of you with that. But there is a good news. Since I have my engagement is another 15 minutes away, I am cutting short. I'll speak for 2 minutes and leave. Now, the journey of financial inclusion, I think, what would I say? Generally, these younger generations say brilliant. I think the word, it means several things. I think it has been brilliant for the last 10, 15 years. We have done extremely well. And we brought a number of people. I think Mr. Dave mentioned it would have taken us 50 years had we gone in the normal way to open a bank account for adults. The programs the government has launched like Jan Dhan Yojana, Bima Suraksha Yojana, and other KCC. We have so many things. I think all of you know there are many things, programs we have been launched and monitor, ensure that every year we are doing well. Now, having said that, let me talk about 2-3 things, and then I think I will leave it to you for the deliberations. One is, of course, in my present capacity, I think ever since I joined, I've been going around the country on the financial inclusion especially, and then small borrowers, credit, how do we do it more credit, how do we provide more credit to the women entrepreneurs, FPOs, SHG groups, and also SMEs. Now, one thing presently we are facing is reissue of REKVSC. Actually, we have a good number of people we need to do that for the future. The other thing we need to focus again is financial literacy. I come across, despite having large number of accounts, people still don't have proper financial literacy. I think we need to do that. We need to invest on providing accurate, correct financial literacy to our population. Because the third thing I have is, I think all of you are aware, the cyber security and digital frauds is mushrooming like anything every day. Despite we are technologically very soundproof, people are, the fraudsters are using the financial illiteracy to commit cyber security frauds and then digital frauds. I think that both are interrelated. When the financial literacy happens, the digital frauds likelihood is lesser. I think we need to ensure that we are also aware of this thing. Now, I know we have a large number of stakeholders here, including the professionals and market practitioners and academia. And I hope what you deliberate, discuss, and share, please share with us, DFS. And we will be very willing to consider any innovative practices, examples to expand, scale it up so that the country moves forward. Thank you very much for your support for financial inclusion, for the supporting us in the DPI we have created, which is now being used everywhere, lauded, has become a model in the entire world. We want to take next step in the next couple of years. Any ideas that emerges from this summit, be most welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for that address and your gracious presence here today. Your presence has encouraged us, and we assure you of great services in the future as well. We now present a small memento to the esteemed chief guest as a token of our appreciation and thanks. May I request Mr. Vipin Sharma, CEO Access, to please join us on stage to kindly felicitate the honored chief guest. Thank you, sir. It's been an honor to have you here with us. We express our deepest thanks and gratitude to the honored chief guest. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for joining us on stage to present the memento to the honored chief guest. We shall also be presenting mementos to the esteemed speakers of the inaugural panel as a token of our appreciation. May I request the team to please hand them over as they leave the stage. Once again, big thanks to all the guests of the inaugural for opening the summit today and setting the right tone to this summit's proceedings. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We are not taking a break for tea. We are not taking a break, I repeat. Please do remain seated.